Bonjour. Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm grateful to the organizer of this meeting, Andrea Pinotti, and to the Institute for giving me the chance to discuss with you. I am not a specialist of virtual worlds, and the only thing I can do today is to discuss a few results or approaches that we use in cognitive neuroscience to try to understand what Andrea was talking about, which is this extraordinary relation we have with the virtual worlds, and particularly with avatars. So because initially I had only 25 minutes, I have chosen not to go on one topic, but to give you a kind of general review of a few approaches. But of course I am going to show two complex slides and go too quickly, not to go in the details of each problem, but maybe to give you an idea of how we try to understand the brain processes which underlie this relation. Okay? Alors. So I will basically discuss 4 points. The first point is the question of, or the hypothesis, I would say, that interaction with avatars engages similar process in the brain than sympathy and empathy. So I will start by that. Now, what am I talking about? Because our host, scientific host, is a philosopher, I have chosen to start with the first slide, reminding you of the theories proposed by the German philosophers Vischer and a number of Lipps concerning a fundamental difference in our social interactions today, but also which I think are also fundamental for the relation with avatars in virtual worlds. What these philosophers said to us is that there are two ways to interact. One is sympathy, Mitfühlung, spatial and temporal process by which individuals experience the same thing as the other in experiencing and at the same time. Sympathy. But they say that empathy, Einfühlung, spatial process, please note, by which individuals project mentally themselves, their self in the other body to feel into. And this slide I got from Gérard Jorland, historian of science, of philosophy of science, who unfortunately died recently, with whom I worked a lot, and Bérangère Thiriou, with whom I have been happy to work. She was a philosopher and became a neuroscientist, and is now in psychiatry. So that was the proposal of these philosophers, which of course was also related with ideas, as you know, concerning ethics, not ethics, but la perception, aesthetics, sorry. Now, of course, sympathy and empathy, we have to add not only the cognitive brain, but also the emotional brain, because it deals with emotion. But I will not speak today at all about emotion. I will restrict myself to what is in the first slide, which is the suggestion that in order to have interaction between ourselves today, but also with the avatars in the virtual world, we have to solve a great number of spatial problems, and particularly changing point of view. So basically, let me remind you, in sympathy, we feel the emotion of others, but we stay at our place. And my position is that sympathy is imitation, emotional contagion. If I laugh, you will try to laugh. If the mother doesn't, the baby doesn't, etc. It is mirror neurons. I have a disagreement with my friend and brother Giacomo Rizzolatti, because I do not think that mirror neurons is empathy. I think mirror neurons is a fundamental, very important mechanism for sympathy, for immediately perceiving in my brain what the other is doing, but I do not change place. resonance, etc. So we know these imitations it's a fundamental mechanism for children. It's also, I think, the extraordinary properties, very complex, of all the mirror system. But it is not the multiple mechanism of empathy. Another example that I think is sympathy is the social value of gaze contact, which is also important in virtual worlds, whether you have gaze contact with the avatar or not, exactly like now, if I establish a gaze contact with some of you. And there is this beautiful paper I like to quote from Nathalie Georges, Ray Dolan, etc. in London. They showed that when you do not have gaze contact and look at a face, you activate the fusiform gyrus, but as soon as you establish gaze contact, you activate the amygdala, that is, you involve the whole emotional brain, gaze contact. So that is still, I think, something to do with general mechanisms of sympathy. Empathy, therefore, as we defined it with Gérard Jorland and Bérangère Thiriou, and we can feel the emotion of others, but from their point of view, we both stay at our place and move our second self to the inside of the other. We can feel their emotion, but we can also inhibit them. If I am a doctor and you cry in front of me, it's useless that I start crying, which is what my mirror system or my emotional contagion system will induce me to do. I have to inhibit the sympathy in order to go in your place. And if you smile at me now and think what I say is stupid, I have to go in your body to understand that you smile, but in fact you think that what I say is not very interesting, right? Inhibition. Hypothesis, empathy is a very complex mechanism requiring perspective change and manipulation of reference frames, and I will document. For that, we, with Bérangère Thiriou, and specialists of artificial avatars in Paris 8, Department of Numerical Arts, we designed this model, which was the artificial funambule. So the subject is standing in front of a funambule, which is dancing on the rope. So that is the model. We published the paper saying that to make of it a paradigm, and then we were lucky enough that Olaf Blanke, is Olaf there yet? No. Olaf Blanke in Lausanne accepted to house Bérangère Thiriou. Remember, she's a philosopher, but she wanted to do the EEG. We did the experiment there to understand what happened in your brain when I say no. When I said no, it took you about 900, not many of you, but some of you at least, it took you 900 milliseconds to change place. And what happens is when you change place, you activate a number of different systems, distinction between self and other, recognition of oneself in the mirror, of course, the human mirror, but eventually you inhibit it, etc. And so what we produced and published, I have to go, unfortunately, rather quick through that, although Professor Pinotti gave me a few more minutes. Now, what we did, all this is published. Everything I show, not everything, but at the beginning is published. So what we basically showed with a group of Olaf and Bérangère is that when you first, when I put my hand down, what you did was what we call mirroring process, embodied self-location, reflection symmetry. And this with EEG, of course, EEG doesn't allow us to go to the as fMRI may have in the deep depth of the brain as much as these techniques. But we found, and that's what struck us, areas in the brain which were very similar to what is called otoscopy. That is this illusion of doubling the body of the double, but without change. And when I say no, and eventually some of you, or most of you, finally changed position, there was activation of other structures. And we actually could show also in Poitiers, in the department of Professor Jafari in psychiatry, and this was the neurologist Tandone who did that schizophrenic patients, which are known to have difficulties of interaction in the world, and they have all this, quite a number of syndromes that you all know about. These schizophrenic patients, or at least a group of them, which were those who had what they call negative symptoms or negative signs, had difficulty doing this shift of system, doing the change in point of view. So that was an indication that we are dealing with something deep, which may be also at the origin of the difficulty that is the hypothesis of these people to have also social interactions or location of their body in the world. And we actually went even further. We then decided to try to see what happens during development. And I will have now a few slides concerning what actually is my main work now for 8 years concerning child development. And I have as you will see, I am lucky enough that although I am not a specialist, to be able to work with pedopsychiatrists. So we, Mohamed Zawi, who is here in the room, designed a baby funambule and a child. They're not easy work because one has to deal with make avatars which are either boys or girls. There are problems of point of view. So just designing for us experimenters a proper avatar to do a scientific experiment is not simple. And this avatar had a bar, like for the other experiments. And we implanted these experiments in Salpêtrière, in the department of David Cohen, the pedopsychiatre. And also it was implemented, and this is a picture I show here, by the group of Olivier Houdet in Sorbonne. They are specialists of child development and working on cognitive inhibition, changing strategies. And this is an example of a young girl who is doing this task of doing like the avatar. So basically that is the task. The girl is in front of the avatar and she is told, les consignes sont compliquées, I don't have time to go into this. So basically this is an example of, to show you how we can very modestly try to have a behavioral approach, not only brain but behavioral approach. So we can look at what the child does when he's either facing the avatar or when he sees the avatar from the back, so otoscopy or aotoscopy. We have the stick of the avatar, and we look at the stick of the child, so we can correlate what the child does, etc. Like if when I did with you the experiment, we would have measured what I did and what you did. I was the avatar and you were the subject, okay? So we can record the behavior, and this was done on autistic children, children with visual spatial deficits, and attentional disorders. So this is an attempt to, therefore, to create these avatars and measure these shifts of behavior, which we think are at the basis of the fundamental mechanisms of interaction, not only in the real world, but also with these virtual creatures. That is just an example of the kind of data. I don't want to go into this. This is all published last year. As you see, this is very, Andrea insisted about the multidisciplinary aspect of this, and I'd like to mention that Soisy Gauthier is from Professor Villa department La Psychanalyse in Paris 8. Anzalone is a computer scientist, David Cohen is a pedopsychiatre, Mohamed Zawi an engineer, Chetouani a robotician, and I am just, and Xavier is a pedopsychiatre, and I am basically the parasite of this experiment. But you see, this is really showing how we have to be multidisciplinary to design these complex attempt. And the slide just shows a correlation between the bar and the bar of the child, and we have found differences between the different pathologies, and also very interesting difference between age under 12 or over 12, so we are doing the developmental aspect of this problem. Hypothesis number 2, which is related to the first one, of course. The relation to avatars we use, in the relation to avatars, we use several reference frames. What am I talking about? When you walk around, or when we navigate in these virtual worlds, or when you try to remember your path from the metro to here, we use different reference frames. We can use egocentric reference frames, that is, remember our movements, or feel our emotions, or our relation with the avatar from our own perspective, our body. This is what is also called in the literature first-person perspective. I call it topokinesthetic because it involves my own movements, in a sense, and episode. We can also have an allocentric representation, or I don't like the word representation. I have read Merleau-Ponty too much, but so I prefer simulation. Allocentric, topographic, but we can also do what we did in the last series of slides. We could have an heterocentric perspective, which is to take somebody else as a reference, third-person perspective. I am always, during my talk, taking Professor Pinotti as a reference to know what, if I know he's watching me, or you. So heterocentric perspective. So the idea is that we have these different reference frames, and basically in the virtual games, in the virtual world, as in the social world, we shift from one to the other permanently. That is what I call manipulation of spatial reference frames. And there is a lot of literature. I don't have time to go into that. We have now from the international community and my own lab, in collaboration also with my friends in Italy, Giorgia Comitri, Professor Pisabiglio, and Rome, etc. We have a lot of data concerning the brain mechanisms underlying all these egocentric, allocentric coding, and I have no time to go. I just mentioned this one because it's a bit new. We also, in addition to the different systems which are involved in these different reference frames, we also have shown that recently there is involvement, of course, in the human hippocampus. As you know, the Nobel Prize has been given to our friends John O'Keefe and the Moses for their discovery of the role of the hippocampus in place coding and allocentric coding. But what we have found over the years in Paris and in collaboration also with Neil Burgess in London is that there is a lateralization of function. That is, the right hippocampus and probably the right brain would be more involved in the global cartographic allocentric coding, and the left hippocampus and the left brain more in the egocentric. And that is maybe not surprise, because the left brain is the brain of language. And if I want to ask you how you came here, you are going to tell me with your left brain and your language. And language is sequential. It is the sequence of actions. And so maybe there is some logic in evolution to have made this functional separation between the two brains, and probably in the virtual world also, when you shift from one narrative, I would say, interaction with the avatar and his story, to a more global, allocentric perception of the location and of the situation of this avatar, you also have to take into consideration this distinction between the involvement of the two brains. Ça va? Now, let's go back to this question of the, or let's go a little more into the question of the heterocentered third-person perspective. I'd like to very quickly remind you that there has been a very interesting study made in France following the suggestion of Professor Jean-Denis Degauz, a neurologist who unfortunately died. He was run over by a motorbike. He just went from du trottoir to the streets and back on the motorbike, 100 kilometers an hour. Okay. And he described heterotopoagnosia. That's a very interesting thing. The doctor asked the patient, show me my ears. So I am the doctor, and I ask you, lady in front, show me my ears. She's okay. Now the patient cannot do that. The patient does that. He shows his ears. He is not able to move his body into the body of the doctor. Change perspective, and if you show a picture of the doctor, the patient can do it. If you show the lunettes, the doctor, the patient can do it. There is something particularly important for the real body. And that may be the difference with the avatars at some point. So there is a very interesting work on that, and we have done some with Anne-Catherine Bachot-Lévy, who is a neurologist, and Laurent Cléré de Langavant, who is a neurologist. We have done some studies concerning this question, which is related also to the problem de la désignation, which I have no time to go into. Now, I'd like also to mention recent work on this topic that we've done, and I was very privileged. This is a collaboration with a group of Olivier Houdet, together with Anya Aite and Grégoire Borst in Paris 5. They used a paradigm for changing perspective, which also has been used by Olaf Blanke, who will speak tomorrow, in which you have a task in which you show objects in the hands of people. And, these questions have also been addressed by Agliotti in Rome and by a number of eminent researchers concerned with this problem of bodily perception of perspective change. And what was the question here was, if you go from a first-person perspective to a third-person perspective, do you have eventually, what do you do with the first person? And may I remind you that I mentioned the fact that for empathy, you have to inhibit sympathy. And what we show in this paper, which is published very recently, 2016, is that in order to adopt a three-person perspective, you have to inhibit the first-person perspective. In a sense, it's trivial, but somehow one has to demonstrate that. And it is what the beautiful work of my colleagues, to which I was associated by chance, could show. And those who want to know about that can find this paper, Aite et al. In child development. And they also looked at the range of effect of this during development, which is kind of interesting, because it develops during ontology. Another approach that we have been trying to do of these problems is the question of remembering a past. The Collège de France is in the Latin Quarter. We are not very far from the Institute here. And we, with Professor Piolino, who is a specialist of autobiographic memory, we did a work which is unpublished, in which we looked at the memory of a path in the city using either first-person perspective or third-person perspective. And with this kind of virtual reality paradigm, one can show that eventually memory, in that particular case, was better in first person. But what we were interested was another aspect, which is familiarity. So this is just to tell you that we are trying to approach the different components of this extremely complex problem. And in the virtual worlds, we also believe that the question of familiarity with the world is going to be very important. And I will mention that because we have with Etienne Armand Amato and Etienne Perreni some data concerning experts and not experts, because you can call it expertise or familiarity. It's not only learning, there's something to do with being familiar with an environment in the virtual world, maybe. So let me show you now just a few slides that will give you an idea of the paradigms which have been used. And every slide I will show now has been published, so those of you who like to know more, we can just, in the discussion, or have the papers concerning this work. Together with my friends in Italy, Giorgia Comitri, well, initially Professor Pizzamiglio, but I am now at the third generation of this collaboration, because Giorgia Comitri and Gaspare Galati were students of Pizzamiglio and Giuseppe Vallar, and now they are professors, and now they are Valentina Sulpicio is a student of Comitri, who was a student of Professor Olbia. So it's very useful for me to work now with 4 generations of colleagues there on the same problem, which is these different spatial reference frames, and also what happens when you have avatars, and we even have one paper concerning empathy. So in this kind of study, we could actually show, to summarize, that when you change point of view, that is, when you give a subject a task, for instance, either with a virtual palace, where you ask the subjects to have different points of view on dustbins, or if you immerse the person in a room with objects on a table, or taking into account the environment, etc. There is a problem, which is how do we transform from first-person perspective, egocentric, to allocentric? This requires some kind of geometric transformation. If I ask you, is this screen parallel to Avenue des Champs-Élysées? You will have to make some transformation in your brain. And many of the results that we have obtained with all these people, and also that on which Neil Burgess in London has speculated, is that there is a little piece of the brain called the retrospinal cortex, which is maybe involved in a transformation between the egocentric first-person coding in the parietal cortex to the more allocentric coding, with complex questions concerning parahippocampus, gyrus, etc. So we are also trying to look more in detail at what is happening in the processing of these structures, because of course this is going to be important in pathology. Now, one example of a paradigm which we had used long ago now with my friends in the Hôpital Salpêtrière. This is also an example of multisensory collaboration. Simon Lambret is a student who was a normal biologist who became a psychiatrist. Sophie Dupont is a neurologist, Séverine Sanson a neuropsychologist. Professor Bolac is the professor of epileptology. And we designed a room which is from room of the l'architecte, j'ai oublié son nom. L'architecte français. So anyway, in which we put a puppet. And what we did is we looked, you see this room with puppet, and the puppet is looking at a lamp. We show this picture, and then we tell the subject the next picture will be taken from the point of view of the puppet. And we show this. And we ask the subject, is this picture taken from the point of view of the puppet? In that case, yes. In that case, no. So we test, what we do is that when we show this picture here, we try to get the subject to put his body inside the puppet, right? So change point of view. And so with hippocampal patients, we have shown that there is a deficit in these patients to change point of view, which is also related to things which have been done in London. So this is a kind of paradigm in which we can try to look at the brain mechanisms involved. Now we even have actually made, together with Simon and Neil Burgess in London, la complète, la totale, comme on dit en français. We have objects on the table. This is a Simon one that we change position, so we modify the position of the object. We have an avatar. We also had an arrow, because the avatar is, what we think in avatars is that they look somewhere. They are oriented, again. So we wanted to look, and we have environment. So we have been able, in this paper in 2012, to look at the different areas involved in all this manipulation. And you see that once more, as in the other, we have, it's not anywhere. It is specialized networks, which one can identify, and which are going to be in interaction, although also, I think, in empathy. Now, I'd like to... combien me reste de temps? 20 minutes? Ah, c'est généreux. Ah, mais je peux parler plus. Non, pas du tout. Je suis très bavard. Voilà. Ça va? Je vous ennuie pas encore? 20 minutes, je peux. Now, another problem in all this is that you cannot start manipulating reference frames if you don't have a reconstruction of your own body, coherent representation. So the question is there any place in the brain where we do this, that is reconstruct a second self, a virtual body, that we can eventually project in empathy in the other? As I mentioned, that there is a fundamental difference between sympathy and empathy, and it is only during empathy that you project yourself to the other. I say that because some of you arrived recently, and I also said that I disagree with my friend Giacomo Rizzolatti that the mirror system is empathy, because you have to project yourself in the body of the other. So the question of was actually, I think that the question was already beautifully answered many years ago by Vidar Penfield. In epileptic patient, he identified subjects, and he said there's a part in the brain in which you have awareness of body scheme. Now, the English have two words, awareness and consciousness. En français, on n'a que la conscience, parce que on est tellement théoricien. So, and he said that, and spatial relationships. Everything is there. Awareness of body scheme. So he said there is a second self here, body scheme, awareness, and spatial relationship. And in 2003, we published with the neurologist Philippe Kahane this paper in which we identified that it was indeed in the temporoparietal junction, which is the primary vestibular cortex, projection of the vestibular system, and in all this area along the superior-temporal sulcus, that by electrical stimulation we have all these illusions of turning the body, etc. And of course, this is very close to what was also beautifully done, but I guess he will also remind you tomorrow of that by Ola Blanke and his colleagues. And I was also interested at that time by the finding of Monica Zilbovicius, who said that in this area here, there is, in autistic children or people, there is an hypoactivity. And my feeling is that if you cannot relate, have a unique body and the relation with the world, why are you going to communicate? So the problem may be not a problem of communication, but of first constructing this capacity to be aware of your body and spatial relationship. This is probably important in avatars. And I showed this beautiful slide that maybe Olaf will show again because it was very inspiring. There is also the work of the Ericsson, and many people are now working on this, showing that how by taking a picture of one's body, you can create this virtual own body, and this is the generalization of the so-called La Main de Caoutchouc, etc. So we have been also interested in my lab on this problem, and with Isadora Olivet, we have made a very small study, complex but small. She came from the cinema, and she was a synesthete, and she was interested in this problem of out-of-body projection, because when in the cinema she saw people caressing each other, she would feel it on her body. And the question, Isadora, I think she's still now in research. The question Isadora asked was the following: if we make a virtual arm, and if we displace this virtual arm, is this going to displace the whole body? And that was kind of interesting because, as you know, Payard had shown now many years ago there is a cephalocaudal influence concerning spatial reorganization of body parts. So the paradigm was that the subject was il était pistonné. So with one hand he was pushing a piston like this. There was a camera taking a picture of the arm, and in the virtual helmet you would see his arm but displaced. So there was a virtual displacement of the real arm into an artificial arm. And the question was, will that induce a rotation of the whole body? So that the subject with the other arm would point straight ahead. And we had some time ago with the Italian group work on straight ahead. So he was pointing straight ahead, and the question was, will that induce a shift of the perceived straight ahead? So we have this little paper. The answer is yes, but of course, as always, it's more complex than one thing. But that is one way that we thought we can now also look not only at the whole body, but at these questions of dissociations. And I will end now by showing you quickly a few paradigms that I have the privilege to work on, which are not completely processed, published, but they are paradigms concerning another aspect of the interaction with avatars, which to me is fascinating. It is a question that not only do we project ourselves inside the body of this virtual beast, although Andrea very clearly did explain to us that this is only a picture. And my friend Etienne Perreny keeps telling me that these are only pixels. So how does it come? But also, when you have two avatars, people like François Garnier, who was the director of a laboratory in the École nationale des arts décoratifs, and who creates virtual world with avatars, people like him have told me that it's incredible how much, when you create, for instance, two avatars, which are in an artificial gallery, and they talk to each other, so two people in two different rooms. So Andrea is in room, I don't know him, I am here, we are both in front of our screens, and we see two avatars looking at a picture in a museum. That is the paradigm of Garnier. And they were impressed to see how much they had the perception that the two avatars were having really social interactions. So it is not only bodily perception, but social interaction, which of course has been studied by a number of people, and I think Melsater and people will talk about that again tomorrow. So wait. Okay, so I start by this. Yeah. So what we designed with François Garnier and Simon Lambret, a museum in which in each room there is 4 pictures, which are from a bank of pictures with very different emotional values. There is La Création du Monde de Courbet, there is very erotic things, very terrible things, neutral, very carefully checked on the web also for their value. So 4 of them in the museum, and what is the paradigm is that the subject is not in a helmet but in front of a screen, and he can see his own avatar, which goes and visits the museum and looks at the different pictures. But the idea is that there is also a second subject who manipulates the second avatar. And the second avatar can be neutral, can be somebody, like when we see the museum, which is completely neutral, independent. I don't care. I can look at la création du monde ou une chose horrible tant que je veux. Il y a d'ailleurs la création, il y a tout ce qu'il faut. But there is also another avatar which is coming close, interactive avatar. So we've been trying to see what is the effect of these different conditions on heart rate, galvanic response, etc. So we have been recording all these physiological measures and also performance, memory, and we are now processing this data. We have, for instance, found that there is a very interesting difference between experts in the games and non-experts. And that is one example, and we are now processing this data. We also have another, and I have to go back, I'm sorry. We have another very beautiful experiment which has been proposed to us by Etienne Pireni and Etienne Armand Amato, who are sitting here, and on which we work with a group of Simon Richir with Geoffrey Goris, and also recently the physiology Professor Do from Orsay. This paradigm is the following. The subject is standing in front of a green screen. This is for incrustation. Kinet takes a picture of his body from the back, so it's going to be an otoscopic projection. And if you look here on the screen, you can see that the subject is, when he looks inside the virtual reality helmet, his image is projected on a paysage of hills and mountains, and he perceives himself flying. And because the Kinet measures his movement, he can control his flight, like when you dream. I don't know if you dream that you fly, but he controls his flight. So it is a situation in which we create a dissociation between the body of the subject on the earth and your perception that you are flying. And there is, I think that in the discussion, if we have time, maybe, Andrea, we could have also Etienne Armand and Etienne introduce and discuss this. And we have done a number of studies. This is still in process. This experiment, by the way, is installed now in La Cité des Sciences, in an area which is involved with games. And this is an example of what Etienne Armand has recently processed concerning questionnaires, concerning the perception of many people. We have had many subjects, we have done the physiology, etc. I have no time to go into that, but maybe we can come back on this question in the discussion. And the last one I will show is, I will mention, is a very, very fascinating project which I had the privilege to do together with Claire Sistac, who is a professional artist, immersive herself in virtual worlds, and Soazic Sanson, who also is a professional artist of these worlds. What they did is that they immersed themselves in Second Life with 2 avatars which created a twin-like situation. So these 2 avatars were neutral, but by the computer, by informatics, by the algorithms, each of the avatars had to imitate the other when one was doing the same. So c'est les météores de Tournier, ceux qui ont les livres. So they created an artificial twinning. And we discussed together, They made also physiological measures, and that was very interesting. It is not a scientific experiment, but it is one of the situations in which we can participate in the creation and evolution of an experiment to eventually have new ideas. And for instance, one very interesting observation they made is that it took them at least 2 or 3 days to be immersed completely in their avatars in the game. And also there's a number of interesting experiments. And j'ai fini with this last picture, which is another paradigm which I have now working with a pedopsychiatrist, which is the double mirror. The double mirror is that between Andrea and me there is a mirror, and I can see myself, or I can see Andrea, or by changing the light, I can see myself little by little being here, until I see Berthoz there. So je me suis créé un double, artificiellement. And I can increase that and ask the subject, do you see more Andrea or more Berthoz? Up or down? And this is being used in Brest on autistic children, in Rennes on schizophrenic patients, and we have a Nature schizophrenic paper accepted, and in Brest also on anorexia mentale prépubère, on these young ladies who have problems with their body. So these are paradigms with which we can try to understand a little bit what is happening in this virtual world, and this is what Andrea wanted me to show you, and I tried to do it.